Let's bring in now Sean Davis. He's an editor at the Federalist, and you'll see him frequently on Fox News, and I believe it's his first time here on the Will Cain Show, which I'm excited to have you on, Sean.
Thanks for having me, Will.
You bet. So listen, last night, Donald Trump gave a town hall with Fox News' Laura Ingraham, and he named several individuals who he said are on his short list for vice president. He said those names include Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy, Congressman Byron Donalds, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, and interestingly, perhaps most interestingly, Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat representative from Hawaii, and Ron DeSantis, the current governor of Florida. What do you think, Sean?
So my wife and I were discussing this the other night, and I actually think the front runners are two names that weren't on that list. I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders is absolutely a good option, governor of Arkansas, former White House press secretary for Trump. And I think another person no one's mentioned, but who I know Trump is very close to and thinks a lot about, is Ben Carson, former brain surgeon, brilliant doctor, ran for president previously unsuccessfully, but I know he and Trump have a close relationship. So I could see him on there as well.
You know, Sean, in the past, this would have been an easier analysis because most presidential candidates look at a vice presidential running mate as what do they bring to my electability hopes? What do they bring to my ticket? Do they deliver me a swing state like Ohio? Do they deliver me Pennsylvania? The job of the vice president, honestly, is not one that many people are concerned about what will you actually get done being the vice president. But with Donald Trump, it's not as though he's looking, I don't think he is, nor does he need to be looking at any of these candidates as somebody that's going to swing one particular state, because everybody's going to be voting for or against Donald Trump. It's going to make no difference whether or not Kristi Noem is on the ticket. So what do you think when you bring up Ben Carson, you bring up Sarah Huckabee Sanders, he considers, Tim Scott or Ron DeSantis, what do you think he's looking for? What does he need as a running mate?
Well, I think he's looking for somebody he can trust. It's interesting. You look back at 2016, he picked Mike Pence, obviously, as someone he thought would allay the concerns of conservative Christians, evangelicals who are worried about, maybe Donald Trump's stance on abortion, pro-life, religious issues. And Pence was brought in to kind of give them the impression, don't worry, we're good. I'm going to listen to you. I'm not going to screw you over. I feel like he's doing a very different thing this time around, especially after getting burned by Pence at the end of his first term. I think he wants someone who can be a good spokesman, who he can trust, who can help him communicate his message to the country. It doesn't look like he's picking someone who he think is going to be like a paint by numbers. I picked this person, he'll help me get this state. I picked this other person, he'll help me get that state.
Sean, if I'm Donald Trump, I'm sure that he is thinking about the word loyalty. And if I'm Donald Trump, I'm thinking about some version of loyalty because, look, I think it's just an undeniable fact if we look at the past of Donald Trump's hiring practices. He's got a lot of people out there who say negative things about him, who have worked for him, both in business and in politics. And I'm looking at this list of people and I'm thinking, you have to take past as a potential predicate for the future. Does this relationship last 4 years? And how does it end? And I think maybe that's not the most important thing in establishing one more, 4-year term. But you sit there and go, if I look at, Bill Barr or, Mike Pompeo or anybody else who's had negative things to say about Donald Trump, am I running a risk with any of these names at the end of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? They join the chorus of people who are anti-Trump.
Yeah, that's a real concern. I would use a different word, a different characteristic I think he needs to look for, which isn't loyalty. Obviously, loyalty is important in politics. I think he needs to get someone who has a spine, because that's actually the thing that seems to determine whether you stand up to the regime, to the onslaught, to the lawfare, is whether someone has a spine and is willing to stand up and say, no, I'm not backing down. You can extort me and blackmail me and attack me and cancel me all you want. I'm not going anywhere. That's what Donald Trump needs, I think, a lot more than a typical yes man, which is what I think of when I think of loyalty in politics. He needs someone who understands that the machine is out to destroy this country, and he needs that person to have the spine and the fortitude to stand up to it and help him take it down.
Do you think any of the five, setting aside the two names that you gave us, do you think any of the five, is it five that I've named? It's Byron Donalds, Kristi Noem, Vivek Ramaswamy, Tim Scott, Tulsi Gabbard, and Ron DeSantis. Do you think any of those satisfy your requirement of a spine when it comes to Donald Trump?
Yeah, I'm going to throw two out immediately, not because of any sort of like personal characteristics or their politics. Byron Donalds and Ron DeSantis are both Florida residents, along with Donald Trump. The Constitution precludes the VP and president on the same ticket from being from the same state. So unless one of them moves or Trump takes his residency back to New Jersey, which I don't see happening, I think we can discount those two, even though I think they're great. I think Byron Donalds is a great spokesman, a great congressman. I think DeSantis is the best governor in the country. I look at Kristi Noem. I saw that the way she caved and cowered when she took up and vetoed a bill in South Dakota to protect women in sports, a bill that she had promised to sign, that she had vowed to sign, and then caved under pressure from the business community. I don't think she has much of a spine. Tulsi might. I think she's pretty impressive. Tim Scott, I think the jury's still out on him. I haven't actually seen him do much really at all in the Senate. I haven't seen him stand up for much. He's an articulate guy. He gives a great message about the importance of freedom and liberty in this country, but I haven't really seen anything from him politically that would suggest he has what it takes to stand up to what the machine is going to do to anyone who sides with Donald Trump in this next election.
So that leaves by process of elimination Tulsi Gabbard, and I would assume you didn't address him, but Vivek Ramaswamy as two that might satisfy those requirements. Real quick, I want your perspective on this, Sean, and we'll move on from vice presidency. Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy, setting aside that Ron DeSantis can't, I also think that they would disqualify themselves to some extent because, and I've had this conversation with several of my co-hosts and friends, Donald Trump doesn't want to spend the next 4 years with the spotlight and the conversation being on the man who could potentially take over after those 4 years. And Ramaswamy and DeSantis come with some vision of the future, meaning they're not just there to be vice president, but also to begin their own platform for one day being president. And that probably wouldn't be appealing to Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the George W. Bush model, where he picked someone who he knew was never going to run for president, wasn't going to upstage him. And he picked Dick Cheney. I mean, that's definitely an issue. Donald Trump likes being the star. It's his show. It's his name at the top of the ticket. I will tell you one thing that I loved about Vivek Ramaswamy, talking about a spine, understanding the problems and going after the machine. That guy ran the presidential campaign, even though he had no chance against Trump. And the reality is this cycle, no one was going to beat Trump. He's the only one who actually went out there and correctly diagnosed the problem, which was the media and the regime, all the censorship, the fact that our country is crumbling. It's awash in crime. Our borders are being overrun. Vivek was the only one who actually seemed to understand and articulate who the enemy was, which it was Democrats and the left. So because of that, because he was so great giving press conferences, he was so great in the debates, I actually think I could see Trump picking him because of how forceful and how convincing he was in those debates.
You know what's fascinating about that, Sean? And I mean, I think we all are still getting our arms around. You're in media, I'm in media, so sometimes I wonder, do we pay too much attention to the media? You know, meaning people out there live their lives, they go to work, they go to church, they have their own ambitions. But I'm only trying to put myself in check. I still come back to, I don't think we have our full arms around how much we're all being manipulated intellectually, like our perception of reality and the extent to which we've been censored over the past it's approaching probably 6 or 7 years now, but probably starting at about 15, 16, the censorship industrial complex has warped that sense of reality we walk around with our ambitions and our families and our jobs. And to your point on Vivek, I don't think we still have a good idea of how impactful that is for people, not just in the media, but everyday Americans and how we live our lives. I want to ask you about this, and it's not divorced from that conversation. Russia. Actually, it's a great transition because it's a great illustration of this point of censorship. Most people understand that the Russia collusion investigation was not just much of a nothing burger, but a psyop planted in reverse to create an environment to interfere with Donald Trump. And it's been largely, on the evidence, just dismissed away. But that has not broken through to that average American understanding things as they walk around. And Democrats are pretending like none of that's ever happened. You know, Nancy Pelosi this week brought it up again. She brought up Russia collusion and Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin. And Jamie Raskin said he's in love with Vladimir. Said Trump is in love with Vladimir Putin. Democratic Congressman Raskin. And I mean, then this week as well, Sean, we get the news that the FBI has charged this whistleblower on how much Hunter Biden got from Burisma. Hunter and Joe Biden is informant on what they got from Burisma with lying and said he was now connected to Russian intelligence. And it just occurred to me, we're probably running 2016 again, Sean. Like, we're doing Russia. Russia is going to be a big part of 2024.
Oh, it is. And it all goes back to 2016. The 2016 election fundamentally broke the brain of the average Democrat in this country, certainly in Washington. They couldn't cope with the fact that Hillary sucked and everyone hated her and Donald Trump beat her. And they had to create this new reality in their minds to help give them some sort of comfort that they didn't lose because their candidate was awful. No. They lost because Russia stole it. And ever since, we've had a collective obsession with Russia in this country, which is little more than a rundown global gas station. Okay, we're not talking about China here. Russia doesn't own the world's manufacturing capacity, doesn't own a bulk of the world's debt. It's just a rundown third world gas station. And yet we've decided to build our entire foreign policy around it, all because Hillary Clinton couldn't find Wisconsin on a map and go visit it even one time in 2016. And because that playbook for them actually worked post 2016, it helped to destroy and cripple Trump's presidency, they've gone right back to it. And the reason they've gone to it, and this gets back to your early point about censorship, is because they know the facts don't actually matter. They can make reality whatever they want it is by just repeating the lie long enough because they control the information apparatus, the media apparatus, and the censorship apparatus in this country. And so I'm so glad you brought up the censorship thing because it is truly an existential threat to this country. You cannot have a republic the way we have it, the way ours was designed, without a robust First Amendment that gives us freedom of press and freedom of speech. And we have the illusion of that now, but we don't have the reality of it, which I actually think is a lot more dangerous than just having a straight propaganda regime. If you know all you're getting every day is lies straight from the government, like what people got through Pravda and the Soviet Union, you're able to automatically filter it, and everyone knows how to filter it. What we have here is the exact same nonsense coming from state-run media, but we have the veneer of a free press. And I think that is so much more dangerous. The left is basically doing what you do as a pet owner when you have to give your dog medicine. You stick it up in a little ball of cheese and he doesn't know he's getting medicine. He thinks he's just getting cheese. That's what the censorship apparatus is doing to us. It's making us think we're getting news when actually what we're being fed over and over again is lies that are helpful to the regime.
And it's all being done, Sean. I think what we're going to, hopefully we will look back with some clarity or understanding, but it's all being done under the banner of saving democracy. It's not just I don't think saving democracy is just the cover. I don't think it's just what they're using as the umbrella to hide all of the censorship. I think they truly believe it's the justification. Like, they engaged the government controlling information globally has been happening for decades, right? And under the banner of saving democracy, whether or not that's Italian elections to avoid communists being elected in Italy, they've been manipulating minds globally under the banner of saving democracy for decades. The difference now is, and whether or not they believe it or not, it is the cover. They have to do it domestically to save democracy.
Yeah, and I think it's important to realize that the left, especially those in power, they don't use words the way you and I use words. We use words because we believe they have fixed meanings. They are able to transmit certain bits of information that the person on the other side knows. They know what those words mean. The left uses words as weapons. Words have no fixed meaning. They're not defined uniformly over time. Words are things that they can use now into manipulating you so they can get more power to do what they want. So when the left comes out and says, we have to take out Trump to save our democracy, they're actually saying, we need to prevent you from voting for who you want, which is actual democracy, so we can protect our power. So I would challenge your listeners to do the following. Every time they hear a Democrat or a member of the left say the word "our democracy" or the phrase "our democracy," replace it with "our power." And that honestly conveys what they're trying to do. They are willing to destroy democracy, which is the ability of us to vote for who we want to, in order to save their own power. And that's what this is all about.
Finally, I want to talk about this with you. By the way, phenomenal answer, Sean. I want to talk to you about this last story. So Joe Biden today has sent out an email where he is going to tell roughly 113,000 Americans, I have canceled your debt. It is the student loan borrowing program he's talked about. It's 153,000 student loan borrowers totaling $1.2 billion. There's a few requirements in there. I think you have to have, at this point, borrowed $12,000 or less and continue to make payments for 10 years, and that you will have your student loan debt forgiven. And it will be followed, as I said, by an email where he is saying, is taking credit for, I have canceled your debt. You know, Sean, I analogized this online a moment ago. Like, Mexico has a long history of buying votes. The political parties of Mexico can show up in line and hand out grocery bags as you're waiting to vote. There's an article from 2000, I believe it's 18, talking about the big currency in the Mexican elections was tortillas. And it's just, there's something clear about that, is like, vote for me, you get your supply of tortillas. You get, buying votes. I don't see a distinction, Sean. I don't see a difference. I'm getting rid of your student loan debt. I'm canceling your debt. By the way, there's an election in November.
Yeah, there is no difference. It's a straight up bribe, and it's completely illegal, because recall that he tried to do this a year or two ago, and he got smacked down by the Supreme Court. They said, you're not allowed to do this. There's no law allowing you to do this. Congress didn't say you had the authority to do this. You're not allowed to go and effectively hand out money from the Treasury without laws from Congress allowing that. And he looked at the Supreme Court decision, and he gave him the middle finger. And he's continued to do it for years. This is just the latest effort. It's an illegal effort to buy votes. It's a legal effort using his power to rig elections. And I wish I could say I don't get shocked anymore, having been in this business for 20 years, watching this kind of corruption, but I'm shocked. I'm shocked at how brazen and how in your face it is, because they know that no matter what happens with the courts, the Supreme Court will take this up again and they'll reject it. And that'll be 2 or 3 years from now. And by then he'll have been able to buy the votes he wants to get the election win that he wants. It's disgusting, and it's not something that's supposed to happen in a free country.
Sean, I just want to get your reaction to this. I know mine. I saw some of the responses on social media to me saying this is no different than what's happening in Mexico, saying, oh, yeah, well, this is a campaign promise, and it's no different than giving tax cuts. Tax cuts is also a vote-buying scheme. Anything a politician promises is a vote-buying scheme. I know my response to that, but I want to hear your response, Sean.
Yeah, tax cuts have to be passed into law by Congress. Article 1, Section 9, no money may be drawn from the Treasury but in consequence of appropriations by law. There was no appropriation doing this. There's no law doing it. It's why it's literally lawless. And I get that some people hate the idea of tax cuts because it makes them shudder at thinking people being able to spend their own money as opposed to it being confiscated by government. But tax cuts are actually enacted by Congress, signed into law by president. None of that happened here.
I love the point about Congress. Mine is what you started to illuminate there. Telling me I can keep more of my money is not the same thing as promising to take my money and give it to something else to absolve them of an obligation that they willingly signed up for. One is not vote buying. It's like, nice shop there. Hope you get to keep it. I get to keep my money. You taking it is the confiscation versus, hey, give me some of his money. That's the vote buying, and not to mention, as you point out, one is passed through an act of Congress. Sean Davis, great to have you on the show today. Let's do it again, man. Co-founder and CEO of the Federalist. Check him out. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Will.